join us as we get going here. So welcome everyone to our first virtual neighborhood meeting of the 2021 new year. A lot has happened since we last met. Our last in-person meeting, happened the first week of March. We were announcing about this virus that had just hit, and COVID and what we were doing and the possibility of shutting down and how to keep us safe. Within a few days after that meeting, we completely shut down, and we've been operating virtually kind of ever since. So I'm really happy to have, as most people know, the Sequoia Station Project that's proposed is one of the hottest topics in town as far as development and projects go. And so I had the opportunity to listen to this presentation in another forum and thought it would be very helpful to bring that presentation here. So I'm happy to have Andrea here from Eden Homes and Wendy, Wendy, can you remind me, you're with Harmony Park Development?
Yeah, that's right. We're representing Low on this project.
Okay, perfect. So she has a presentation that she's going to share with us, and then there'll be a question and answer session afterwards. So if we can hold our questions till then, that would be wonderful. So Wendy, go ahead and take it away.
And I think Wendy's going to share her screen and I'll get us started. But while she's doing that, I'll just introduce myself. So I'm Andrea Osgood, Vice President with Eden Housing. And I want to also acknowledge Jesse again, who's with Low, and then Jesse Tejeda, and then Alan Chamorro, who they can wave. They are here representing Low, and you'll also hear from Wendy after me, who's also representing Low on this project. So I'm really excited to be here tonight to sort of present the latest on Sequoia Station, and I'll just get started with a really quick overview of who Low and Eden are. Low is a private real estate company that was started in 1972, so been around a really long time, and they have a wide expertise across a lot of different kinds of real estate, including office, hotels, and residential. So I'll move along there. And then Eden, who I work for, is a nonprofit based in Alameda County. We've been around for 52 years, and we've built over 11,000 homes all across the state. And in addition to doing upfront development work, we also own and operate our properties with our own property management and resident services company for the long term. Next slide. Just a little bit, we're here in San Mateo County, and we really focus on being a good neighbor. And this is a project in East Palo Alto that is existing, and we are currently in the process of rehabbing and refurbishing that property so that it's a nice quality housing development for, the next 30 to 40 years. So it's a great project, and we were able to leverage $20 million of transportation funding for the wider community and using this affordable housing project. So, next. But what we're here to talk to you about and what you're most excited about is, of course, Sequoia Station downtown. And we think this development site offers a lot of opportunities for the neighborhood. And you'll see this cool puzzle piece graphic here. And this is really starting the conversation with what we're most excited about, which is really the opportunity for this site to be reimagined to kind of really knit the fabric of Redwood City back together, because this site, while beloved and providing lots of great community amenities and retail, is sort of hard to get through and around from one side of town to the other. So we'll talk more about that as we kind of dive in. This is just a high level view of what we're proposing here. We've organized it into 6 basic blocks. And originally we were proposing, more housing now from hearing from the community. So in addition to the Eden housing component, which is roughly 220, 25 units, we're adding an additional 400 or so homes in Block A, which we'll talk about more. We're also really focusing on how this site can unlock transportation improvements for the wider community, bringing transit and jobs close together, and really strengthening all of those connections and public places and spaces on the ground plane that people can really interact and enjoy this new community asset, including thinking about places for children and youth to go and explore and have fun. So next. This is just a rendering of what it could look like, again, on that pedestrian plane, really wanting to activate it, create a place where people can come together and interact and stay and linger and, you know, just have a great time in the downtown core. So with this project, we think it brings, there's a lot of challenges that are faced, but we think that also there's a lot of opportunities that the redevelopment can bring. And so we want to sort of highlight what those are and what we're most excited about. And of course, for me, housing, working for a housing group, nonprofit, that is what I get up and work on every day and really what moves me. So this is a little a chart talking about RHNA, which is a little in the weeds, but RHNA is the Regional Housing Needs Analysis, which is of course a policy that the state uses to ask cities and other jurisdictions to produce housing. And what this is showing us, the orange box or the orange bars are showing what the last round Redwood City was asked to build. The green bars are showing what Redwood City was actually able to build. So you can see over on the right-hand side, the market rate, actually Redwood City did a great job and built a lot of market rate housing, actually more than the state was asking for the city to do. But in the more affordable categories, so the moderate, low, and very low, you can see those green bars are pretty low and didn't quite meet the goals. And what I'm really excited about for this project is you can see then in that sort of rust colored bar is that one project is actually basically going to equal the progress that the city was able to make over 8 years with one project. So we think this is a really transformative project that will move the meter on the production of affordable housing and also market rate housing. And we need housing of all types. So next slide. This is talking about 2 different options for housing. So in addition to the affordable housing, we also are looking at adding a whole another building of housing, because that was something we heard after our first conversation with the community, was we'd really like more housing. And so we're looking at 2 different options, and really the differential there between the 500 homes versus the 625 homes is really going to be the height of one of those buildings. So if we're able to go the full 12 stories that's contemplated in the downtown specific plan, then we could get up to 625 homes total. And you can see the breakdown again there of the very low, low, and moderate. So roughly 124 very low, 99 low, and 2 moderate units in our affordable component. And then the breakdown of the missing middle and market rate that would be in the low components, or the low building. And then I think this is where I hand it over to Wendy.
Yeah, and before we leave this slide, I just also wanted to note that, you know, some of the total housing and the number of housing units is dependent on sort of if these are studio 1, 2, or 3 bedrooms. And the Eden housing program is 50% 2 and 3 bedroom units. You've heard this is an acute need within the community, particularly within the affordable units. And so, you know, you could actually get more than 200, 225 units in that affordable building, but it would be more heavily weighted towards studio 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. Actually getting 2 and 3 bedroom units at that very low, low, and moderate income category is just really critical, and it's really hard to do. So we're really looking not just towards quantity, but quality here. And the same thing goes for the market rate and the missing middle housing component. So we're going to get to the other elements of this project. The really unique aspect of this project is its adjacency to transit. It is a very large, as you know, 12-acre site directly adjacent to the Caltrain station, and it's also directly where Caltrain is looking to make significant infrastructure improvements to satisfy their 2040 business plan. But this is what it looks like today. It's not exactly a super awesome downtown station, although again, very well utilized, very well appreciated. There's just a lot of opportunity here. But in order to, so what their 2040 business plan includes is the expansion of track width and right-of-way to allow for passing tracks and for further electrification. And so Redwood City in this location in particular has been identified as the place for Caltrain to meet their needs. But what this means, because of the build out around the recent build out around this site, this particular project would need to dedicate quite a bit of land in order for over an acre of land to accommodate the Caltrain improvements. And you can see where that land is. It's in the existing Safeway and CVS building. So what's unlocking the development potential here enables us to move essentially the right-of-way line for Caltrain and enable them to do their improvements while developing the project, while also maintaining Safeway and CVS on the property and moving them into a first phase. So this is a huge opportunity. It's unique to this property really, and the transit district as a whole for the city. The other, it's a large site again, and so we really see this as an opportunity to provide something different than what you're seeing right here. Because of its location in downtown and next to transit, the interest in having jobs located right here, again, core downtown, right next to transit, getting people to be able to ride Caltrain to and from work that's where employers want to be in the future, right now and in the future. So this opportunity of transforming something like that we all see right here, which is a very car-centric parking lot, office building, into something that's a job center in downtown is very appealing for the long-term economic viability for the city. The other challenge that Andrea alluded to is this current property. It was developed during a different era, right? It was more about the time when we were always putting gates up. We're doing exclusive communities, quote unquote, and closing the gates and doing these private, very private feeling communities. And so a lot of this site really turns its back. In fact, every side turns its back on the right of way, on the downtown, on El Camino Real. There's not really a lot of a feeling of this being, a public space to go. So it's very uncomfortable, a lot of these crossings, and it's a big parking field, right? So it doesn't feel particularly warm and inviting and welcoming to be able to get bikes and pedestrians in particular across the site. And so with the opportunity to improve Caltrain comes the opportunity to elevate tracks and actually create this porosity of this site. It enables bikes and peds and some vehicular connections, certainly, but really expanding that downtown core naturally, so that it's not just such a barrier and such a feeling of, are you really going to walk through there to get to downtown? You might just hop in your car instead. Again, outdated shopping experience, right? Single story. You're literally going to sit on, go to your Panda Express and then drive over to the Safeway. You're not going to walk a lot in this, in the existing configuration of Sequoia Station, because it's not intended for you to walk around in it. It's intended for you to drive. That's what these developments were intended to do. And we want to recreate this ground plane. We want to have public ownership over this ground plane, public plazas, connections right to downtown. Retail needs to be reimagined, otherwise it's going to die. We need to make sure that these retail spaces have outdoor dining and activities that people really want to go to, particularly as we're going, hopefully, to get into this post-pandemic world, right? So we want to make sure that this is very pedestrian friendly and still very neighborhood centric. This is neighborhood serving retail. We are maintaining Safeway and CVS during the entire time that this project will be under construction. Safeway and CVS will move into the first phase of development, as you can see here on the corner of El Camino and Jefferson. And so it enables Safeway and CVS to stay open, to then relocate into new modernized store, push the parking down below, and make that first level really a bike and pedestrian plane, with really looking at how we can leverage art in this community and make sure we get an artist walk, just really comfortable places, as well as some great new and existing tenants to stay on the site. The other thing that we see as a challenge is, Redwood City's lost a lot of their youth activities. There also is no childcare, very limited childcare right near the heart of downtown. So we see this as a challenge, but also it's a great opportunity. We've identified a space on this property to get a great family activity center right here, which could have things like bowling and bocce, dining, and just making kind of a place for all ages. We've also committed 10,000 square feet to a childcare facility right on site, which will enable not just the residents of this community, but all of downtown and the surrounding neighborhoods to be able to use something and have access to something that just does not exist. These are all things, that we've been listening to. We walked through the city's door almost 2 years ago to start talking about this property and how we could develop it. And we've been reaching out to the community and to stakeholders and having lots of conversations now over Zoom, previously like coffee talks and so forth. And these are some of the things we've heard over and over and over again, as well as the city's been hearing it, because this is really a city-led process. We heard that loud and clear when we went in front of the city back in February for the initial run at what the original project looked like. And this is part of a transit district planning process. The city is taking ownership over this. Think of it as sort of a new specific plan or a portion of the downtown precise plan where they're looking at these particular properties and that are necessary for the Caltrain expansion. That's why these properties were identified to be part of the transit district. With that process, we're running side by side because, as you can see in the next slide here, there's a lot of things we need to consider. We need to consider not just the council priorities, but all the work that's been done to date, not just RENA, but the Caltrain 2040 vision, the downtown precise plan, the El Camino Real corridor plan, Redwood City Moves, the climate action plan. There's a lot of good planning effort that's gone into this site. And there's also a lot of complexity. There's a lot of property owners. There's a lot of interest on the site from the community. So we're trying to take that all in and really run side by side. So it's a collaborative effort. The city takes ownership of this and they do the process, but we listen and we kind of put pen to paper and show what it can look like. One thing that we really feel have heard over and over is that there was a lot of work put into the downtown precise plan. And while it might not be perfect, and it frankly is now, it's pretty much done because it's been built out, a lot of the intentions of the downtown precise plan should still be considered. And so we are trying to conform to the downtown precise plan as much as possible while still keeping the dialogue open to talk about things like architectural styles or, for example, you'll see here the circles are where we don't conform or we're proposing not to conform. And where it says transit, that's because I'll show you in the next slide, there actually were a couple of streets that were actual roadways for vehicles that were intended to punch through the site that we are proposing to remove to make those in bike and pedestrian streets. So we don't conform perfectly to the downtown precise plan, but there's a good reason for that. And so we want to have that dialogue. The other place where we're looking for exceptions are in parking, not in the retail parking, because we believe that people need in and out access to retail and be able to park, and the retailers want that and their consumers want that. But for the commercial properties and the residential property that are on here, we don't need as much parking when we're directly adjacent to transit. So we are looking for some relief in the parking standards to help encourage people, frankly, to use mass transit as well. Just a little summary of sort of the block by block, and then we have a very detailed summary after this of a block by block breakdown, but we're looking at about 500 to 625 homes here. Again, the difference is block A, which is a market rate and missing middle housing block, could be 8 stories or it could be 12 stories. We don't know what's going to be acceptable to the community. If we want to maximize the housing, which we are hearing is a need, then we'll get more housing on the site. If we want to reduce the height of that building, then it will be less housing. And so we're trying to balance that need and really understand what the community is looking for and get a little feedback on that. The 225 homes far exceeds the 20% requirement of the city. Depending on whether or not we have 500 or 625 homes, it makes it so that there's 35% to 45% of affordable housing on the site. A true mixed income community, again, with Block A also integrating some missing middle housing. We have this pink area that you can see here, which is identified as the 1 acre of land for Caltrain expansion improvements, as well as critical bike and pedestrian connections. And unlocking Caltrain, this Caltrain improvement really actually unlocks the opportunity for a new downtown station, which is pretty exciting. And that's what the city is looking at with Caltrain right now. And then just other community benefits, as I mentioned, new retail, a new modernized Safeway and CVS, a child care center, public realm, a lot of public realm and plazas, and then youth and family dining activities. And there's going to be there's office proposed right on transit. It's more, to us, it makes a lot of sense to put office on transit rather than in these suburban locations that everybody has to drive to. And so this last slide, I'm actually going to just leave on here. It's very dense. This breaks all the rules of do not put a lot of words on a slide. But this is a 12-acre project, and we're trying to break it down into city blocks. You know, this is right in the downtown core, and so we want to look at this as more of a true 2-acre city block. And so in Block A, what is there? What's on the ground plane? What's above? You know, what's the open space that's around it? So we're looking at this in a unique way, and architecturally we're looking at it in a unique way. So every block has its own identity and its own sense of character. And so this is the program within the blocks. You can see conformance as far as heights with the downtown precise plan and so forth. But I'm just going to leave this on here so that people can refer to it if there's questions. And thank you so much for your time and for listening to us tonight. And we're happy to take any questions here. If you think about it later, we'll pass along our emails in the chat so you can pass it along to us as well.
Thank you so much. That was a really great presentation, and I'm so grateful that my neighbors and fellow residents got an opportunity to see it. I know Farm Hill, one of our neighborhood is a very, most of our neighbors are either elderly or families. We have a ton of families, a lot of young kids, and our kids do need a place to go. But they also don't really have a safe way to get downtown. There's really no east-west forms of transportation other than driving to bring them down there. So that's a real need that we have. I know that I use Safeway. I know that my neighbors, some of the stores that they talk about wanting to save would be like See's Candy and Madfish. I also wanted to talk a little bit about, just bring it up and then I'll open up for other questions, is you mentioned about retail and dining. Well, retail's kind of died in Redwood City. I mean, we are basically an entertainment city. And so we have a lot of restaurants, and with COVID, it's really put our businesses at a really big disadvantage because they're competing with one another for what revenue there is to make. So I'd like to see some more diversified stuff downtown, not new retail, new ways for the city to raise money so we're not having to make drastic cuts in services. That's just some of my feedback as the neighborhood chair. And then I will go ahead and open it up to if anyone has any questions, or if you prefer to put questions in the chat, I can read them off.
Yeah, and I do, just so everyone knows, we're looking at essentially a like-for-like swap as far as square footage of retail on this site. So we're not looking to drastically reduce it. And that's retail restaurants and the services such as CVS, Safeway, et cetera. So with that, it's about 175,000 square feet that are there right now. It's not going to exclusively be restaurants, for example, or exclusively be entertainment, but it is a critical component to keep keep the vitality and the activity on the site, and not just have people go to Safeway and then leave. We do want to keep people lingering on the site.
Yes, and I think that's essential with our downtown, because right now, like if you go to Burlingame or Palo Alto, you can eat in pre-COVID times. You can go into stores and shop, and you can spend time down there. But right now, we go down and eat, and maybe drop our kids off at the movies, and then we sort of hang out and drink coffee. I mean, there's nowhere other place to spend money for those who are fortunate enough to have some money to spend downtown. So, all right, okay, so I have a question in the chat. I attended your presentation to council last year. You said you over 3 dozen outreach meetings and proposed 17 stories. I wasn't following the project so heavily back then. Could you address? Sure.
Yeah. So we have been doing a number of outreach meetings, and if you know of anybody that wants to have something similar to this, again, please email us. We'll put our information in the chat, or you can get it from anybody here, really. But original application on Block A, which you see up on the screen, we were looking at the flexibility to have additional height. The current downtown precise plan shows 12 stories as the maximum height for that block, and we're looking at the flexibility to go up to 17 stories. That's not to say that we hadn't designed anything yet. That was a big lightning rod, a very big mistake from us, but what we were trying to do is keep that flexibility and dialogue as far as push-pull. If we want to have lower heights in some areas, higher heights in other areas, like let's have the conversation. It got picked up as sort of a firm proposal and something we're absolutely dead set on. And so before that council meeting, we removed that 17-story element, even before that council meeting. And this plan that you're seeing in front of you, again, has that eliminated. There is nothing that's above the downtown precise plan heights. And we've been working very hard, and you'll see we're actually going to be putting together a preview package in advance of the January 25th council meeting that's coming up, that will be talking about some of these updates that you're seeing. And in there, you'll see a lot of varied heights here. So we're trying to make sure that we are in conformance with those heights and also stepping down and getting a lot of variation on this property. So the 17 stories is gone. We heard the concern about there only being one housing block, and so we've added a second housing block on the property, as well as daycare and family activities on the site. So we're working hard to integrate what we've heard. We know there's a lot more work to do, and we have not submitted a formal application yet. We just want everyone to know we're just at the beginning of this process, and we're going to be working with the city as they're going through their environmental review for the transit district, and kind of, again, working side by side with them to put in an application. And in that application, you're also going to see some of the ways that we're integrating sustainability into this project and making it a project that really is a modern example of sustainability and something Redwood City can be proud of.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We're so fortunate that if it hasn't even been proposed, that we're getting the information early on so we can digest it and understand what it means. So I'm grateful for that. I see Jerry has his hand up, so I'm gonna ask Jerry to unmute.
Got a couple of questions and issues. I think 17 stories is way too big for a town like Redwood City. Maybe San Francisco downtown, that might be a different story. But I think that's way oversized for our area. I don't think there's anything anywhere near there that's that tall at this point. Maybe the tallest buildings right now are what, 6 to 8 or so, something like that. And that's, I think, a much more reasonable choice. Another thing, I worry, I'm concerned about what happens to all the small retailers. What happens to See's Candy? Right now, there's the sushi place, See's Candy. There's a little coffee shop, the cell phone store. Where are these people going to go? And what's the difference going to be in rent for someplace like, for instance, See's Candy? I don't have any idea what they pay a month for rent, but how much increase will there be in a new piece of property, assuming they were able to move in there?
Sure, your questions and comments are really great. Just to calm everybody, there is no 17-story proposal on this site. That has been eliminated. We are adhering to all of the downtown precise plan heights or lower. So there is no 17-story tower proposed. That was gone before February of 2020. So I don't want anybody to hold on to that because it was a previous conversation. So that is gone. As far as the retailers, the really challenging part, as you saw on these slides, and I'm going to go back a couple of slides here to the sort of complexity of this project, is you could actually put on that very bottom where you see all the different landowners and the different stakeholders and developers and so forth that are here. You can actually add all the tenants on there, because tenants all have rights as well. And so all of this is contingent upon and is being worked on. For example, CVS is a tenant. They have a very long lease that remains. And so with the property owners have already worked with CVS to come up with an agreement where that is acceptable to them so that they can be relocated onto this first phase of development. That's going to happen with every tenant that has remaining rights there. So, and really the tenant is like a property owner. They have the control in that situation. So I want to alleviate any concerns that folks may have of, people getting kicked out or people not being at the table and a part of this conversation. So we're still continuing to focus on this project as being a neighborhood serving center. We've heard, about See's Candy being very beloved, and that we hear that often when See's Candy is a tenant, actually. So we are definitely in conversations, and the Regency and Safeway, who have tenants as property owners on here, are spearheading those conversations.
I have some questions here, and some of them are not necessarily for the developer, but it's about the area around there. So let me just kind of talk a little bit about the train piece there. First of all, a couple of comments and thoughts and questions. First of all, I'm wondering if the California bullet train is still planning to have a stop somewhere, and if this might actually be one of those ones, or is it this California bullet train completely a history now? Second question in terms of the train is I think that this is going to be a great area to hang out, and so is the space right across the tracks. Wondering if there's anything sort of thought out to make it easier so you don't have to actually cross the tracks and wait for it. It's even though it's not terribly complicated to cross from the Safeway to the other side, I think that there could be something better done with it. And the third, train related and kind of part of that same kind of group of questions is, what is Caltrain planning to do with this particular space that they're wanting from there? I'm just kind of curious because, again, can't really put additional tracks here or anything like that, since it ends at that the crossing there and stuff. So those ones are kind of train related questions.
Again, all great questions. So this is, so let me see if I can remember everything. As far as high-speed rail, I think that the design that's being considered could still accommodate high-speed rail because the tracks would be, I think, would be used. But there's a lot of discussion on whether or not that's going to happen or not. So that is probably a question that's better suited for the agencies. But I do know that it's something that is being talked about as a part of their process. The city is working directly with Caltrain, and we're a part of those conversations. Everyone else is at the table together, obviously, but the city has a memorandum of understanding to work with Caltrain to understand what all their needs are. And with that is coming a very big study on grade separation. And maybe you all have heard that there's grade separation meetings. There's a couple, if you go on the city's website this month, where they're answering grade separation questions. And that's all because to expand these tracks, which is they're going from a 2-track to up to a 4-track configuration in this area where you see Sequoia Station all the way through that Perry lot. That's where they're going to be expanding the tracks to 4 tracks for these passing tracks. And that would happen above grade. So that is a very big infrastructure project. But what it also does is it enables you to have connections that don't exist currently right into downtown. And Caltrain has some really great, and so does the city. They're working on some really great examples of what that can look like and other places that have implemented something like this. So for Sequoia Station in particular, it provides this opportunity to create, and that's sort of what I was sharing with you, some of the things we're looking for as far as exceptions. This plaza right here can become a bike and pedestrian connection right to the other side, right to the Winslow lot that's on the opposite side, and it can become a sort of a landing pad. And this can become with the trains above. Now that's a long-term, right? This is a long-term infrastructure project. So in the interim, we're talking to the city as well as what does this look like? How can we make the connection better in the interim? So there's a lot of different pieces that are being discussed, and Caltrain and the city are absolutely are working very diligently towards this. And I'm sure you could go on their website, like I said, and join any of those conversations. And they also have website up for the transit district altogether that you can go to. If you just type in transit district Redwood City on Google, it'll pop right up. And there's a community open house where you can see all of these plans and kind of get in the weeds on it. But the one thing that we do know is that this expansion and this identified expansion really needs Sequoia Station and the land at Sequoia Station in order to unlock its potential.
Okay, excellent, thank you. If I may, I have a second question about the bikeability of it. My kids actually biked to downtown a couple of days ago to get some bubble tea, and I'm always a little concerned when they take on bikes. So first of all, I didn't fully understand, is this Franklin Street here going to be completely off limits to cars from Jefferson to James, or is there still going to be cars in here? And the second question is about what does it mean to sort of improve the bikeability and the arrows that you had going from this particular space? What does that actually look like? How do we make them safer for, let's say, for my kids? They're probably going to be grown up and then left the house by then, but I assume that there'll be kids like mine who will want to be biking to the downtown at some point in time.
Yeah, what is it about that boba tea? My kids also go biking or skateboarding to get boba. So I totally know what you're talking about here. So there's been a lot of work put into how to make this area more bikeable and pedestrian friendly. And the El Camino corridor plan, because we have the train on one side, which is a barrier, but we also have El Camino Real, which is a huge barrier. And so these intersections are not hospitable. They're very challenging to navigate, particularly as a kid. As an adult, they're challenging and wide. And so there's a lot of, there's bike lanes that would be for more of your sophisticated biker that would be happening. But if you look on both Hamilton and Franklin, those sidewalks are very wide sidewalks. Alan or Jesse, I think these are 15 feet minimum to, I don't know how wide, those plazas get very wide. But just even the typical sidewalk is much, much more substantial. So while this is not exclusively bike and pedestrian, it is in between block A and block B. There has to be some car movement on here to get the cars underground to park. The focus is to get them underground as quickly as possible, so that then the rest of the site feels very bike and pedestrian friendly. So there's a lot of concepts, and working Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition played an integral role in both Redwood City Moves as well as El Camino Corridor Plan. We work very closely with them as a partner to make sure that the very best practices are integrated into site design to make sure that it's as safe and hospitable, not just for the super highway bicyclist, but for the kids and the everyday cyclist. So we're going to be working on that. You'll probably see a few more details as we move forward, or you definitely will. And certainly in the preview package too, we have some information on that sort of stuff.
I can just add one thing to that, which is that this is Alan Chamorro. The bike lane on El Camino Real is a protected, I think it's called a class 4 bike lane, but it's fully protected with barriers. And that's also on the northern side of the site, which is on James. That'll be a protected barrier as well. So very bike friendly. And as Wendy said, we're also talking about potentially having a bike barn, which would be a public space to store bikes for commuters and I guess people coming downtown, but it's more set up for commuters, but really bike friendly.
We've had some really serious accidents down there. And so that's a really big concern for folks. They really want to be safe. And I agree that there are those two spaces are between the train tracks and El Camino. It's basically like 3 separate areas of downtown. You've got like your El Camino is one thing, and then you've got go into the Sequoia Station, and that's, there's been increased crime and drug use in that parking lot. And then you have the train, which all parents worry about kids crossing the train, and that's another separation. So I think these are all really good points. There's a couple specific questions in the chat, Wendy, if you could take those. And I just see that Leslie has a question as well that I'll ask that if you could address, there's a couple questions in the chat that are specific, and I know we're going over on time. If you could address those, and then I will ask for Leslie.
Sure. So I see one question about between tech office and life sciences. So I think that we want to make sure that we, the office can be flexible, and we haven't gotten into the design or anything like that, obviously, but that these spaces can be flexible for either a life science user, which is more of biotech, and oftentimes these folks cluster together, but there's not enough space for these users. So we really want to make sure that when we're studying this site environmentally, that we're looking at the opportunity for both a traditional tech office user as well as life science users. It's just a little bit different as far as, say, the type of traffic that can be produced or the number of users that are on the site. So those are some of the differences. And the total office space between the 4 blocks we've reduced it by about 150,000 square feet from our last application. So it's at about 1.2 to 1.25 million square feet on the 4 blocks. And the ratio of home to office square footage, I actually do not have the exact square footage for the residential. I'm going to guess that it's about 500 to 600,000 square feet, given the total, and it's going to vary because of the range that we're looking at between 500 and 600 units, but it's probably about 500 to 600,000 square feet versus it was about 200,000 square feet previously. Another question in here is about the precise plan. It's never been sunset, the precise plan that's been talked about a lot, but technically the precise plan is still open. There's still some capacity for hotel and I think retail uses. What is happening is that there's a central Redwood City planning effort that's occurring, and it's occurring right alongside the transit district planning process and it's effectively a relook at the downtown precise plan. I think that the transit district is a little bit unique because of the fact that it is very, very transit focused and how to get the transportation improvements for Caltrain in these surrounding properties. So there are 2 efforts happening, but the downtown precise plan has not yet been sunset, but it likely will be superseded once the central Redwood City planning effort is done. I'm sure that the city staff could answer that question better than I could. And so yes, the revisiting of heights and so forth is all a part of that discussion. And that actually was a question on the city's survey that was on their website, again, their transit district website. And I don't know if that survey is still open. I don't think it is, but obviously they're always happy to take comments by email or at their meetings. So that height and density was absolutely something that they asked for input on as a part of the transit district planning process.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I have a couple questions in the chat, but it's going to be our last. I'm going to combine them because they're both about housing. The question I have is, we have a lot of new apartment buildings in various phases of development with the majority at high rent levels. Does anyone know how the full open developments are and how many current existing Redwood City families have been able to move into these new existing units as they are being pushed or priced out of the current homes? And to add to that, there was a question of, is the housing going to be all rental or are there homeownership opportunities? And a comment about adding the trees, liking tree coverings on El Camino Real. Thank you.
Yep, the El Camino Real, the corridor plan is what sort of talks about the greening and making the El Camino Real really more pedestrian scale. So we're really taking those requirements that have been identified in that plan as a part of that. So that's why you're seeing those trees along there. Regarding rental versus ownership housing, this site is complicated because it is long. Why can't I think of it? Instead of it being instead of it being a simple property, it's a ground lease. So rental property is what works best in this situation because really people aren't accustomed in ownership situations in the United States to ground leases. So because of the ground lease component of the land transaction here, it just makes it so rental is going to be the necessary type of housing that's on this site. I don't have an answer to how, I think that the city has gathered a lot of information. I've heard that question at the chamber before. You know, how much is, how leased out are the Gray Star projects and so forth. I mean, just the fact that Gray Star came back and is proposing another project, indicates that things are leasing well. But I don't have an answer to how well leased the projects are, which is part of why we're actually looking at this as a diverse and mixed income community and not exclusively high rent housing. So, and luxury housing, it's definitely a more diverse housing spectrum here.
We certainly appreciate that. I know that we've gone significantly over your time, and I just want to thank all three of you for presenting this to us. If you could add any information that you would like to share with us in the chat. This meeting's recorded. We'll go ahead and share it out to whoever couldn't join tonight. And I'm very grateful for your time and your effort and your willingness to talk with the community and hear what we our concerns and what we'd like to see going forward. So thank you so much.
Great.
Thank
And
you.
the meeting, the check-in with the council is on January 25th, and they'll be talking about the transit district update as well as this project update. So thank you all. We really appreciate it. Thank
you. Good night. Okay, our next up on our agenda is we are going to be talking about well, you know, Ed's been on. I'm gonna put Ed on next. We're gonna talk about the crime in Farm Hill. Ed's been waiting, and I'm sure he's got other things going. So thank you so much. We have Lieutenant Ed Conover with us from the Redwood City Police Department tonight. And when we last met, we had a series of home burglaries that were happening up in Farm Hill, and that's been many months. That was last spring. We've had some issues with catalytic converters, porch thefts, an auto burglary. And I know that policing looks different now in COVID. I know there was a time we weren't doing traffic stops. So Ed's here to sort of explain what is Redwood City policing looking right now during COVID, what type of issues are coming up, and what the police department is doing to ensure our safety here in our neighborhood.
Yeah, Joanna, thanks so much for having me. COVID definitely was a bit of a bump in the road for us. And it's kind of affected us in three ways. The first is that we do have to deal with some personnel loss. We have department members, not at a huge rate, fortunately, but we do have them going out with anytime they show up with flu-like symptoms, we have to send them home. And Chris could speak to this, and you know this being having the experience you had, Joanna. We always fought through that, but now anytime we're showing symptoms, we're calling in sick, and that does impact our staffing level from time to time. The other issue we're having it has to do with the changes that have been made with the booking process, and in order for the sheriff to attempt to keep not only his staff safe, but also the inmates as safe as possible, they've radically changed up who they will accept for booking. And so we are not booking people anywhere near as often as we would in normal times. And then sort of the final component is that we have the San Mateo County Superior Court has obviously suffered some major setbacks, and they've got about a 5,000 case backlog right now, which is an astronomical number. And what that means is that the normal process from investigation to arrest to prosecution is radically delayed. And that manifests itself in a lot of repeat arrests of people that we've run into. And so it does impact our ability sort of to break the cycle. There's been a number of situations where we've gone for multiple weeks dealing with the same person, causing significant amounts of damage and causing a lot of mayhem, for lack of a better term. But the reality is that we're in this together as a community. We're facing all of us, everybody on this call and everybody in this community is facing this sort of unprecedented challenge. And I think that from the department's point of view, the community support in this time and the community understanding has been really, really gratifying. In the early stages when masks weren't available, we had a community group of quilters equip everybody in the department with cloth masks, which was phenomenal. A local sewing store donated the cloth, and the list goes on. And so that really that's sort of how we've responded to COVID, and we've done it like everything we do and working with the community, and we're all sort of being like Gumby right now, aren't we? We got to be flexible.
Yes, thank you. We certainly do. So as the department, are you issuing citations like for speeding, for example, like I know that's an issue in our neighborhood. Are you back to, I know at the beginning of COVID and now we're in this surge phase. So I don't know where that places us. If you are, because I know if Chris was working right now, I would be concerned that he's pulling people over. As much as I want the kids to be safe, I also don't want him to get COVID. So what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joanne. And it really is a balancing act, isn't it? When COVID first broke out and we didn't know what we didn't know about it, we did radically scale back what we call proactive activity. That is not the cases where someone doesn't necessarily call us to say, hey, there's something occurring, please come. We see a violation, be it a traffic violation, pedestrian violation, or some other criminal activity, and then we proactively go out and contact that person. And we scaled that back radically. At the start of COVID. During the summer, we rolled back in to going back to the proactive stops, including traffic. And we were sort of faced with a quandary because we did see this, this surge coming back in the winter. And we did debate internally whether or not we were going to go back to a very limited proactive approach. But ultimately where we came, there were sort of two factors that we in our analysis on that. And the first was understanding the way that COVID is transmitted. The traffic stops are a less likely vector, given the outdoor nature of it, given the fact that we've got we've got masks on, and we're not really that close to someone for that long. And when we balance that against the concern with drunk drivers, people speeding, and then the public safety hazard that creates, we opted to take, we do put ourselves at a little more risk, there's no denying it. If we just stayed in the police station, we'd be a lot safer, right? But we do have a responsibility to the community to do the best we can to protect them. And so we are doing proactive stops, particularly in the traffic arena.
We appreciate that. And it's good to know what to expect. You know, in COVID, things change all the time. So it's good for the neighborhood to know what to expect, if we should even expect traffic patrols. So that's really helpful. Is there anybody who has any specific questions for Lieutenant Conover? You can either put them in the chat or raise your hand. I don't see anything. So, I see Jerry. Go ahead, Jerry.
One question, have residential burglaries gone down because people are pretty much home all the time now?
Yeah, great question, Jerry. If you look at, and I got the stats here, if you look at your area, so that's the 7 and the 8 beat, in terms of this quarter to quarter, looking at 2018, 2019, and 2020, the burglaries will remain basically flat. We looked at 13 in 2018, 15 in 2019, and 14 in 2020. And some good news, bad news. We worked in conjunction. There was a whole rash of burglaries up in your area. And this was kind of right when COVID kicked off. And working with, that was a crew that was working the whole peninsula and working with partners up and down the peninsula, particularly Daly City. We were able to solve 12 of the 14 that had occurred. That's the good news. The bad news, as you remember what I said about the 5,000 case backup in the court, that's impacting the ability to move forward with the prosecution. So it's the situation we're in, and we're just rolling with it. But the detectives did a really, really good job in tracking down who was doing that and closing those cases.
Yeah, I appreciate that information, because we were kind of left at a point where we didn't know what the status was because it was under an investigation. So for us, it was my understanding that it was basically within like a 4-block area that was getting hit up there. And so for 14 burglaries to occur in that small area, people were, really alarmed. And so to know that 12 of the 14 were solved, I think brings, some sort of relief, knowing that, okay, you're on top of it and the people have been apprehended. I haven't heard, I know a lot of people, the things that go on, usually I'll hear it. I don't know if they necessarily make a report. But if anyone else wants to share an experience that's, if they know of something that's gone on recently, I know there's a question in the chat about donuts. That's a big problem we have up here. I don't know. I see the things up by Kenyatta. I also see them on 280. There's a period at night, Leslie could tell you, I'm sure Tom and Jerry, we're Ben, we'll be, all of a sudden we hear this screeching, and we're wondering, when is the Bain gonna come? Like somebody is gonna get killed. And we see the tire marks, but it's consistent. And we kind of echo here. So it's hard to really know exactly where they're coming from, but can you, what can you share about that, Ed?
Yeah, so, well, first off, I can share that 280 is obviously CHP's jurisdiction, and I travel that section of 280, and I have the same reaction you do when I see the skid marks. It's like, first off, how is this happening, and why is no one lying in a ditch? So it is the same problem you run into with trying to figure out where the sound is coming from, and we do get the calls and we do respond to them, and they are a priority. If we observe drivers driving recklessly, and certainly doing donuts in the middle of a street would qualify for that, we'll take enforcement action and do our best to put a case that's prosecutable. But the calls we generally get are reckless driving in the general area, somewhere on Farm Hill or somewhere around Farm Hill or somewhere around Kenyatta. So it is a little frustrating for us as well because of the nature of the violation, we have to see it before we can take enforcement action on it. So we do take it seriously, and just with all things, I'd encourage people to share with us the information they have, and a lot of people feel hesitant to call 911, and it's like I said at the beginning, we work best when we're working as a community. It's a matter of us working with the residents and the visitors, and the residents and visitors working with us. And when we get that symbiosis going, then we're all the more effective. So if you do hear these things, absolutely call it in, and the appropriate line to call it in is on 911. Some people kind of hesitate over that, right? They're like, I'm not sure if this is an emergency. Well, it is an in progress crime, and that's really what 911 is for.
You know, I see here, Ed, that it seems to be like a pattern on weekends, and it seems to be like, I'm guessing it would be during like swing shift or midnights. So starting like around 9 o'clock. Could we ask that we might get a little bit of patrols through here just for some to be visible in the area, to see if that might offset some of this activity by just seeing a patrol car go through 9, 10 o'clock at night over the weekend on the weekend shift. And maybe that will discourage that type of activity.
Yeah, and I think that there's two ways of looking at it, because that certainly would. And if I had a lot of officers to throw at the problem, I would absolutely do that, but I don't. But what would also deter it is if, as soon as this is occurring, when it's occurring, we get a call, then we'll respond. And even if we don't necessarily catch them in the act, if they've just done their deed, right, and then a patrol car rolls through, that puts them on notice that the neighbors are paying attention and the neighbors are reporting. And that also maximizes our effectiveness, because when you look at so I'm in charge of the weekend patrol teams. I'm in charge of 3 teams, but I have a limited resource that's very valuable and very expensive. And so we have to be very cautious about how we deploy that resource. So what I would say is, when you hear that, when you see that, and I see Leslie's was the one who put the note there. Leslie, I'd really encourage you that the second that starts kicking off, don't think about it, don't ponder it, just dial 911. Tell us what's happening, and we'll send officers out there. And even, like I said, even if we don't catch them in the act, they may be driving out while we're driving in, but they're on notice at that point.
I think they have to be living around here. I mean, who would just go to Lonesome Pine and start peeling out randomly? I mean, they have to be somewhere around our area. So thank you so much, Ed. I appreciate if anyone, if all the questions are asked, we can move on to our next subject. I really appreciate the time. I know it was a long presentation at the beginning, and I'm grateful for your partnership.
Oh no, Joanna, thanks so much for having me. And Joanna has my contact info, so if anyone wants to talk specifically about a problem or an issue, Joanna can get you that info, and I'd be happy to talk with you guys directly. And I really appreciate you guys making time for me to be a part of your community. Thank you so much.
Ed. Have a good evening.
Likewise. Take care.
Thanks. So next on our, I know it's 8:03, so I'm going to try and go quickly, but safety is a lot on our agenda tonight because, like I said earlier, when we met last, we were talking all about this new virus, COVID, and what that was going to mean for us. And so safety is a big deal. We're all home. We're all trying to figure out how do we get our kids out and moving and socializing, but in a safe way, and move, so we've done safe streets. We have this beautiful new park in the, down at Red Morton, the Magical Bridge Playground. And so those are the next items on our agenda. And I know that the conversation actually started on a page on Facebook where one of a local religious leader of ours, his wife mentioned that there was some issues crossing the street at Valota. Chris and I, our first home was on Valota, right across from Red Morton Park. And this is you can't even park your car on the street without losing a mirror. So it's a narrow road. It's heavily traveled. It goes, everybody knows it goes, from Woodside all the way to Jefferson. But this is a playground that offers spectacular opportunities for kids of all abilities, ages, and right now, with our kids not being able to be in school, it's a beautiful resource, and we have to make sure that we can safely get there. So I told her that I would work with other neighborhood associations, and if I had the support of the community, that I would formally request on behalf of the association and the neighbors and whoever wanted to join on, that we get some sort of make a formal request for either pedestrian lights at that intersection of Valota. Somehow maybe we can incorporate it with what's going on with the new YMCA facility. They can, whatever we have going, maybe we can collaborate, but I think we need to do something. We do it at the post office downtown. I just really think it's urgent, and I'm hoping to get some feedback from other folks and see what you think about that, and if that's something that you'd like to explore. And everybody's open to just basically open forum at this time.
So are we talking about Jefferson, or are we talking about Vera, where you cross from Vera over to the park?
So because there's so many different neighborhoods, I mean, actually from where we are, we have Eagle Hill, Roosevelt,
right,
Farm Hill. I mean, there's
right.
so many neighborhoods right around there. So we have kids crossing Jefferson, and then we have kids crossing on our side. And then we have the big cross also, Jefferson and Alameda. I mean, there's a lot of crossing going on, but Valota seems to be the one where, people are turning left, and there's a lot of traffic turning left, not just straight or with lights, or seems to be the most heavily traveled one.
So the traffic calming for this area was part of the senior YMCA project, right? But that's on hold now, or canceled or terminated. I don't really know. But that's not done right now. So I don't know. We should probably ask for at least doing the traffic calming part of this, even if they don't want to do the buildings right now, but do the traffic part. And there, it would say you get a real roundabout at Vera and Valota. There is supposed to be better crossings at Madison and Valota. And then again, they wanted to repair the traffic circle that is on Hudson and Madison. And that's just a traffic circle, and the professionals have said, the consultants have said, that's all wrong the way it is right now. You have to make it a roundabout to have it safe. And that was all part of the YMCA, Senior Citizen Veteran Center traffic calming study. So that's on the website. And then my guess is because that project is paused, the whole traffic calming is also paused right now. But that, they could do that right now.
Yeah, I agree. And Leslie just put it, I don't know if everyone's reading the chat, but she says, yes, a light similar to the one at Jefferson and Haas that only works when you're crossing, when the button is pushed. That would be great. And I agree. That works well when the kids are crossing over to go to John Gill.
John Gill has one, yeah.
Yeah. And that works. I mean, and I really think it's something that we should do. Does anyone have any opposition to that?
So are you also thinking about a car traffic light to turn from Jefferson to Valota? Because that whole intersection is kind of dangerous.
The whole intersection is kind of dangerous. And I think that getting the light and working that intersection, you know how the city works. Sorry, Amanda,
Yeah.
but there's got to be studies and it's like forever. And so I think that to really get this moving, if we start with the safety of the kids and having a way for them to safely cross, and then we later on our agenda is our long-term goals for what do we want to focus on and get accomplished this year. That could be something that we work on, because I know that a lot of us have kids and we're worried. We've had bad accidents, people have been killed. We want to make sure our kids can safely get around, and right now more than ever they need the ability to just be kids in whichever way possible. So I think we could get some pretty good buy-in, and I'm pretty sure that the other neighborhood associations would join on, because this is a park that serves the whole city.
And there are several studies. There's a study about the Veteran Center traffic calming. There's a study what they call the Vera Bike Boulevard, which is nothing about bikes, has nothing to do with bikes. It's just a slow street with a lot of weird intersections. But that study is done or is in the works. And if you combine the two or three, you get a little bit safety in that area.
Yeah, I really appreciate. I know, Gert, this is really a special. Like, you really know your stuff when it comes to the site. Really appreciate your feedback.
I'm asking for the real Vera Bike Boulevard for 5 years now.
I know.
And I'm not getting it.
So maybe we can put that. I'd like to put that on our priority list for that coming year. So I am going to formally, then on behalf of our association, I'm going to formally collaborate with other neighborhood associations, and I will put out a formal request to the city for the safe pedestrian crossing for the new Magical Bridge playground by the end of the month. So that's I'm really glad to hear that this is something that everybody's interested in doing. So next is I want to bring up the safe streets. I know when we first went into doing safe streets in Farm Hill, we overwhelmingly chose to use Fernside as our safe street. But unfortunately, I mean, it was overwhelming. It was like, 85% of the people said, let's use Fernside. And the other, like 2 people said Crompton, and 1 person said Bain, maybe 2 people said Bain Place. So they started off with Dover, Crompton, and Bain Place. And I just happened to be I was at the River House at the time. And I started to get phone calls like, what the heck's going on in Crompton and Dover? And I wasn't really knowing when it was going to be implemented. So since then, we've removed Dover because, as everybody knows, where Jerry and I live and Tommy, we have to use one of those streets to get out of here. We can't just, you can't close off all of those streets, and they're not heavily traveled anyway. So I'm getting a lot of feedback that maybe the Crompton Safe Street is really not really doing much for our neighborhood. And I was hoping to get feedback from others to see if I should request that. I haven't heard from the folks up by Bain Place. They don't really have a representative representing Canyon right now. But Jerry, you live on Crompton. I hope it's okay that I say that. What do you think? I think it's been kind of cumbersome for folks.
It's not inconvenient for me. It slows me down when I turn around the corner. That's about all. But I think if the goal, I sent a note along with my survey to the city, and I said if their goal was to make the street walkable, and some people like to walk down the middle of the street. I don't see any reason for it, but some people feel safer walking right down the middle of the street. I don't think that goal has been achieved because hardly anyone ever does it. I see there are a lot of people walking up and down my sidewalk going, it's a kind of a nice thoroughfare, and a lot of bikes come from Alameda and shoot down Crompton and then meet up down on El Camino again, or Jefferson. But I don't think it's done a whole lot of good. Maybe it has slowed down some of the traffic in front of the house, because we do get a lot of fast cars that fly down from Alameda and cut through Crompton. So it may be a benefit for that. There was just too much traffic, and I tried to get the city to do something a long time ago, and they refused. So I'm maybe in favor of leaving it. It doesn't affect me one way or another, but it's not, I think it has slowed down the traffic.
Well, that's good, really good feedback. Because a lot of times I just am hearing from folks who are, it's not working for them. So I'm glad to hear that. I know that the signs happen to be like right on the corner. So
Yeah.
sometimes, and I think we've alleviated the problem near Cheshire, because like UPS could not turn from Cheshire down the Crompton going towards Dover without knocking the signs over. But if no one is opposed to keeping it, in many ways, I feel kind of like some residents in different areas are not being served because we have a street that's not really being utilized that much.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe Regina has some other ideas if she chimes in tonight or another
Well,
meeting.
that's right. That's right. Regina, what do you think? You're right there.
Yeah.
It slows down the traffic and I like it.
Perfect.
I periodically move the signs over a little bit when you're coming from Vera, let's say from Key Market. It's hard to make the right-hand turn if your car is parked on the left-hand side. So I just get out and move the signs. It works for me.
Okay. But that's great. That's totally, I'm so happy to hear that.
It really slows down the traffic. They used to come from the Alameda, come down our street and zoom up to Farm Hill, even though they could only make a right-hand turn there. That has really cut down a lot.
Well, that's fantastic. So
yeah, I agree. I think it has slowed down the amount of cars and the speed of the cars.
Keep them up. Jerry and I will periodically move the signs over so it's easier to make a right-hand turn, right, Jerry?
Yeah, I gotta kind of go around them, and it's almost a blind spot on my particular windshield. I have to raise my head up to kind of look around so I don't hit the sawhorses.
Yeah. I move them all the time. Makes it perfect.
But it's okay.
It's interesting that people would use Crompton as a shortcut. It doesn't look like a shortcut to anywhere.
It's a very definite shortcut.
All right.
Well, they like it because it's fast. It's a fast, especially the bikers. It's a downhill and they don't have to use the brakes. They just come off of Alameda and they just fly down the street.
There's no stop sign on Vera there like there is on Alameda de los Pulgas.
Yeah.
It's really crazy the way the routes that people will take.
Yeah.
When we first moved here, we moved here when I was pregnant with Emma, and she's going to be 16 soon. We didn't have hardly any traffic on Edith. Nobody, unless you lived on Edith, you didn't come. But now it comes down Chesterton, which then they come through. So it's all loopy, and people are surprised at how many people.
Jerry had a couple of years ago. We had actually speed meters coming down because people come down from the Alameda, come down Crompton. So they eliminate the traffic sign, they eliminate the flashing light and stop sign at Vera and the Alameda. Yeah. Then they eliminate the light at Jefferson and Alameda. So they come through our neighborhood, go up to Farm Hill. They can only make a right-hand turn there, but then to get to Canyon and those, they have eliminated two or three lights. It was terrible for a while, right, Jerry?
Yeah, people figure out a way around everything.
Yeah, thanks for the tips. Yeah.
Don't come down my street. I'll catch you.
Well, and then you also have
great tips. I'm learning a lot here.
You also have the occasional cars that like go through almost your backyard up here on Farm Hill. So yeah, I mean, there's always like a rollover, or I'd say every 18 months, you're like looking over the fence. Is everybody okay? For whatever reason, that curve there.
I'm waiting for a car to come through my fence and kill the chickens. So, you know, it hasn't happened yet, but it's closed many times.
The
So
real-
you guys are the ones with the back to that fence there. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, the one that had my husband sign on down.
Yeah.
That's our house. So, all right, so that is good. So moving on then to our priorities. Does anybody have any different priorities that they would like to see us focus on? Because we're a pretty active group of people, and I think we have the ability to get some stuff done. So does anyone have any specific priorities that they want to put forward that we can put goals to? Of course, we can use in our next, in our March meeting, put that down, what that's going to look like. But what do you want to see? What do you want to do?
I just
Nothing.
love to see the neighbors, and these meetings are extremely valuable. I wonder how we can entice more people to join this kind of discussion. What's your marketing method to get the word out?
Well, right now we have and Chris will drop the links into the chat. We have a Facebook, a closed group. We have a Facebook public page. I post on Nextdoor. I do email, and then I talk to folks whenever I can, and other people share. Like a lot of us in this group alone, we're connected to other people, other groups, other segments, maybe Park and Rec or school district or whatever. And we hope to, just share that information out. But as you can see, it is the core group of people who usually come to the same meeting. So the more help we can get sharing that, hey, we actually get something out of this and it's worth your time. And it's not so frequent that people are put off by it. I think that it's.
I'd like to see an earlier email, because I just happened to spot that you're posting on Nextdoor. I'm not on Facebook or any of those other social media sites, but I happened to catch the one on Nextdoor, which gave me enough warning for tonight. And then the one you sent today, I think it was today,
Yes.
a reminder for this. That's the first and only one that I got. It would be nice to have something, maybe an additional email the week before or something.
Okay. So if you could send me a direct message. I think, Jerry, I have like 3 different emails for you.
No, there's only one.
Okay. So maybe that's where I'm going wrong with it. And so would you mind
Okay.
direct messaging me? And I think
Sure.
I might have one. Okay. So that's good. And so then traditionally I kind of know what we're going to talk about. I don't really get a lot of feedback. I'd love more feedback of what you want to talk about. And then get the notices out of what we're going to talk about. Like the meeting, our next meeting is going to be on schedule for March 4th in this same forum. And then once we get the agenda, so are you saying you'd like to have the agenda, know what's going to be on the agenda like 10 days before or 2 weeks before, or?
The main thing is knowing that there will be a meeting.
Okay.
That's the main thing, and the agenda can come later on.
Okay, perfect. So I'm hoping now that we purchased the Zoom account that we'll just resume our regular schedule of doing our meetings every other first Thursday of the month. And we'll just do it via Zoom. And, we can offer this indefinitely, really, if it helps folks as far as childcare and being able to attend from home and being easier. Whatever we have to do to, allow more people to join us.
Okay.
So in terms of goals and what we can have in these meetings, I think that today was a very nice combination of knowing what kind of the big things that are happening in Redwood City, B, anything that we need to know that is going on within our neighborhoods, and C, sort of ideation of how we can make this into even better place to live. I think it was a very nice agenda for today, and more like that. And of course, if there are going to be some things that is going to be things that we can work on together, or really ideate or have more of an impact together, I think that would be great. But I don't know what those ones would necessarily be. Very nice job. I love these meetings.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Anybody else? So I have a couple announcements, and then I'm sure Amanda probably has some too, and Chris will drop the links to some of the announcements. We have a big survey going on right now. It's called the Bay Area 2050 Plan. And it's going to chart the course for the future of transportation, housing, the environment, and the local economy for the next 30 years. So if you could take the time, it takes about 2 or 3 minutes to fill out the survey. If you could do that, I did it myself. I would really appreciate if you could share with your neighbors or friends, or, I mean, it's a regional study, so it's important to fill out. San Mateo County, my husband is a commissioner on the San Mateo County Mental Health Commission, and I was just approved by the Board of Supervisors to sit on our Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Commission. So I'm excited about that. And San Mateo County is offering free subscription to Headspace. They offer meditation, music, a bunch of stuff. So that is a tool that we can use, you know, when dealing with stress and kids. I know I started doing meditation, and not something I thought I would ever do, but I enjoy it. So that's something that's available for free. Also, Redwood City has hired our very first equity officer. Her name is Brianna Evans, and she's going to be Equity and Inclusion is her title, officer. So I'm hopeful that maybe we can recruit her to come to one of our meetings, maybe our March meeting, and she can talk to us about what her role will be with the city, what her goals are, and what that new position looks like here in Redwood City. So those are my announcements. Amanda, what do you got going?
So I just put in, or not just, but when the conversation was happening, the 2 transit district question and answer sessions are going to be held next Wednesday, the 13th from 6 to 8 p.m. and the following, not Thursday, excuse me, Wednesday, the following week. And I posted both of the Zoom links in there. They're both on the city calendar and on the Facebook page for the city. They're total question and answer. It's not going to be like a webinar format. It'll be very interactive between staff, and don't quote me on this, but there might be also somebody from the people who were talking tonight there as well, but definitely staff, and they will be there specifically to answer questions about the transit district at both. The other one is just that we're going to be hosting a blood drive every month at the community activities building, and it's hard to recruit for that right now because of safety reasons, of course, but it is 100% safe, and it's extremely vital that people are continuing to donate blood, especially now, especially during the winter months. People tend to not donate blood as much, but it's through Vitalent. It happens once a month, again, at the community activities building on the second Tuesday. Wednesdays, goodness gracious, apparently Wednesdays don't exist in my brain these days. Second Wednesday of every month through, for now, January, February, March. And then as we continue going, I'm sure there'll be more times to donate, but it's definitely important, and it does save lives, and it is totally safe to do that. So those are my 2 announcements.
Thank you so much. And Chris reminded me, I had it on my other page. The county is doing, San Mateo County Health, they're doing what we need to know about the COVID-19 vaccine. And that is coming up on Wednesday, January 13th at 11:30 a.m. And it's going to be a live meeting. And so that's important, because I know a lot of us have questions about what does that vaccine rollout look like, and where am I on the list, and are my kids going to get it, and who's going to get it first. So that is, and that, Chris, did you put the link? Oh, actually, I'll have to put the link because it didn't show up. It didn't highlight here. So I will, okay, perfect. All right. So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And I want to thank you for your commitment to the community, and Happy New Year. And I will look forward to seeing everybody on March 4th, same time, day of the week, and Bat Channel.
Thank you for hosting.
Thanks.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Johanna.
You're welcome. Take care,
Good night.
everybody.
Okay.
Take care. Stay safe.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.